Hello ladies and gentlemen, Sir Cypher here with Let's Play Company of Heroes 2, Mission 14, the Reichstag, the last mission in the original campaign. It's been a long road from the Eastern Front, summer of 1941, Operation Barbarossa, Stalingrad, Kursk,
Berlin, the last stronghold of those fascists who still had the will to fight. It had been 4 brutal years, a long and bloody road, but this was their homeland and we knew they would fight to the end. Final victory would not come easily.
The Molotov Bridge taken at once.
All right, so now we've got. Huh? Now we've got a KV2. The KV1's big brother.
Squads have arrived to fight. Not one step back, comrades.
Let's see here. And we're gonna take this city with the help of a bunch of mortar teams and conscripts. So Battle of Berlin, one of those things, doesn't get covered that much compared to and I say doesn't get covered that much because I live in the United States and the Eastern Front in general doesn't get covered that much, but it get covered that much. Okay, so actually I think the IS-2 could just run over these. It's anything like nope, I guess it can't. Okay. Normally in Company of Heroes games, well, in Company of Heroes 1 and in this game, normally heavy tanks can just run over most types of obstacles. But I guess they can't run over these tank traps. The fascists have come prepared. So we'll get that. We'll get a sniper. So honestly, I don't really think there's a way to lose this mission. There's no time limit. The enemy doesn't attack you back. So I'm just gonna summon lots of conscripts and drive across. Oh no! Drive across this bridge. So this is, I actually looked it up, and this is actually a fairly accurate representation of the portion of the city where the battle took place.
We have Front-to-Vicky squads at our disposal.
With the river and this bridge here. Where's my sniper? Get that. Get that. So they're gonna blow the. You know what? Fuck it. Everybody go across. We can get more conscripts. It's not a big deal.
Front-to-Vicky squads have arrived to fight. Not one step back, comrades.
So the IS tanks were named after. They're like the UC whatever. I don't know what the I stands for, but the S stands for Stalin, and they were named after Stalin. Probably because somebody was thinking, like, maybe I won't get purged if I name a tank after Stalin. But knowing Stalin, it probably didn't work.
Look, the bridge is still intact.
Intact and clear of Germans. Let us move up and secure the opposite side. before they try to take it back.
Advance, men.
Penal battalion squads have arrived.
Before we can take the Reichstag, we must clear the fanatics out of the Ministry of the Interior building here. We believe the Germans are storing munitions within, which I am sure we can find a good use for. Once secured, we must move on to the Opera House, where the enemy is entrenched in great numbers. With that in our hands, we'll push across the plaza through heavy fortifications and assault their last line of defense in front of the Reichstag itself. Comrades, do not be discouraged by our casualties. The time of victory is nearly at hand. Capture the Reichstag, and we will crush what is left of the German morale. We will see the Soviet flag fly from its roof.
Yeah. Advance, men.
The Germans will likely be heavily dug in on the streets. We should try to flank through the city blocks when possible. Our artillery is still out of range, and Flak Towers in the area are preventing close air support. Boots on the ground and armor in the streets, comrades! We will take Berlin ourselves!
So, they just mentioned Flak Towers, and I'm a little disappointed Flak Towers aren't represented here, because I feel like the Flak Towers are like one of the coolest things in the war, especially like its ratio of like coolness to how much it's represented. Basically the oh, why are these guys not up here? Basically they built in not just Berlin, I think there was a couple in some other places too, but they built these giant concrete towers that look kind of like almost like castle towers, and they put AA guns all over them, and filled them with ammo and put hospitals in them, and well, and used them as strong points. Okay, let's go, guys.
The enemy has killed another infantry squad.
Where's my 234? Oh, I guess I didn't build it. So they're these giant,
Not one step back, comrades.
the Flak Towers are these giant, like concrete towers that, yeah, are full of AA guns and hospitals and ammo, and, you know, they're like 10 story, I don't know how tall they are, but they're like, you know, like 10 stories tall, you know, so, and they were huge, and, they were meant for AA, but the thing is because they're so tall and they're covered with like 88s and 120 millimeter cannons and all this other crap, they're really effective inside the city because they overlooked all sorts of streets and things, and you have these giant cannons on the roof that could blast anything they saw for miles. Okay, let's go over here. So we're gonna leave that area. We're gonna go this area first, so they could blast anything they saw for miles. And oh, there's my T-34-85. And because of that, at first the advancing Russians like, okay, we gotta take these things out, but they use so much concrete that they basically like couldn't be destroyed. It's like if you've ever seen a ballistics test against a really thick piece of like armored glass, because armored glass is like a bunch of sheets of glass. Oh my god, there's so many. armored. It's like a bunch of pieces of glass, like sandwiched together with like vinyl layers between them. And once you shot enough stuff at the armored glass, like it all just kind of like turns into like powder stuck together, and you just shoot it and like little bits pop off, but you never seem to like get through it unless you use like something crazy. And they used so much concrete, and it was so thick, and they used so much steel to reinforce the concrete that you basically just like couldn't get through it. You couldn't blow the thing up. And so a lot of them are still around to this day, because they just, even after the war, they tried to blow them up, and I think they blew up one, and they had to put so much like explosive in the thing that it was like incredibly destructive to the area of the city it was in, and like it shot giant concrete blocks everywhere. And so they just gave up. They're like, it's just not worth it. But anyway, so the there's these giant flak towers in the city, and there's a good video about them that I'll link, sort of a kind of quick overview. But there's these giant flak towers in the city, and yeah, I mean, so the Red Army tried to blow them up, and they just couldn't, because they just were so ridiculously powerful and tough. And so I think in the end they just snuck by them at night, because they just were like, they were just too oh no, don't run into our own satchel charge. They were just too difficult to destroy. So yeah, my understanding is they actually delayed. Oh shoot, where's my sniper?
Commander, good job on taking out that howitzer. We've received reports from Allied divisions of shelling on their lines. There may be more. Sweep the riverbank and find any others. Take them out. Yes.
Those Germans were
So there's a
not enough left to make this gun useful. Stop those pioneers! They're going for the
So they're gonna try and steal this Stug, but not if I throw a satchel charge in the middle of them. Or maybe that's not gonna work. I think this Stug's almost dead though, so I guess it's not gonna be that useful. Okay. The real prize is over here with this Sturmpanzer IV.
Penal troops are standing by. Stand your ground for the Rodina. Yes. That is the fate of all our enemies. For the fatherland! IS-2 moving. You have orders. Orders received. In motion.
Okay. Take that. Put the T-34 over here.
We now have access to penal squads.
But yeah, I think some of the flak towers, like, you know, they didn't surrender for like days afterwards. And yeah, they just ended up having to sneak by them because they were just too dang tough. They just used too much dang concrete. Okay, no, you were supposed to throw an anti-tank. Oh my god, useless. Useless. Okay, you guys get in there. You guys repair it. So there is a secondary objective to destroy the howitzers. You saw I threw a bomb at one of them there. But yeah, I don't know too much about that part of the battle. If there actually were howitzers that needed to be taken out, but I do know for real those flak towers were a big problem. Oh.
We are away. It will be ours. Heavy tank here. Ready for orders. T-34 moving out. Let's set this mortar up over there.
Okay, let's get a sniper. So in the last stages, the Battle of Berlin, like the battle for the actual city, and I believe this is true, this is just the battle for the actual city, An estimated 180,000
Another infantry squad.
soldiers died. There's 80,000 on the Red Army side and 100,000 on the German side. And I think the reason why the casualties were so unequal is basically the opposite of, you know, all of the battles, or a lot of the battles up until that point, is that the Russians were better equipped, better trained, more experienced, better supplied, and the German defenders, a lot of them were just like conscripts and old people and people with bad improvised weapons and other things. Okay. So there's another one of those howitzers here. I just want to destroy it so I can feel like I've done a full job. I've done my due diligence here.
We found another howitzer.
Okay. Alright, that's all good.
Howitzer neutralized.
So the Sturmpanzer 4 is you know, so apparently these are kind of like improvised weapons. There was like only 300 of them made, which is less than even like a King Tiger. Yeah, based on the Panzer 4. I was reading up on them, and it seems like they weren't actually that successful. That they, just from what I could tell, they didn't seem like that they had a really great history, but I do think they're really cute. I mean, look at that thing. It's a cute little tank. So Brumbar was apparently the, and I'm probably mispronouncing, was apparently the Allied intelligence name for them. And from what I read, it means grump in German, or like grumpy, which I also think is kind of a cute name for a tank. Probably not cute if you got hit by a shell from it, but you know. Okay. Alright, let's advance. The article I read said that one of the German nicknames for it was Stupa, which is an abbreviation for Sturmpanzer, like Stupa, and I also think that's really cute. So, you know, who said tanks can't be kind of cute? It just reminds me of something out of like Metal Slug or something like that. Alright, men advance. Where's my sniper? Book. Okay.
A squad of infantry has been killed. Death before retreat. Hero squads are now available to die for the motherland. Strafbach needs orders.
Get the engineers over here. So I mentioned, I kind of was talking about this before, but I am kind of just sort of fascinated by the concept of, like, you know, obviously people were still fighting, you know, in this battle, right? There's several hundred thousand German soldiers who, you know, are fighting here in this battle, and I just am kind of fascinated about like why people would still be fighting, like, you know, like Like, you're almost certainly gonna die.
Penal squads are
Um,
able to die for the motherland.
I don't think anybody is buying the propaganda at this point. I could see that, like, maybe some people... Oopsies. I could see that maybe some people, like, you know, a little bit earlier, they kind of had the thought that the Japanese had, which was like, okay, well, we can't win it, but eventually... Oh god, you guys are just running back to the grenade. But essentially, like, if we play our cards right, we could just make them give up. Why are you guys running away? Throw your fucking... No. Throw it. It's like, you can obviously throw it. The pathing is obviously... It's like, Jesus Christ, okay. Alright.
Penal troops are standing by.
Not one step back, comrades.
Okay. Let's go here.
Going down this street is suicide. We should flank through the city blocks to the east and west.
So there is a giant AT gun there, which is being kind enough to reveal itself for me, so I can hit it with a mortar team. Although maybe I should back up.
Penal squads are now available to die for the motherland.
Yeah.
Comrade Commander, advance forward and secure the ruined Kroll Opera
Okay.
House.
I think it was here.
T-34 ready.
They will likely have the front entrance heavily defended. We might find an alternate entrance to the east.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's right there. Okay. Just gotta hit it with a couple mortars. Where's my sniper? There we go. Okay. Okay, get the combat engineers. Send my cute little stupa. I really like that nickname.
Retreat under penalty
My little
of
stupa to move down there. Okay, let's see.
Another artillery gun!
We now have access to penal squads. Use those cowards well.
Fencemen. So yeah, I feel like, you know, like, where did they get a couple 100,000 people to still fight? Because it's like, yeah, you know, a couple of years into this, like maybe 1944 or
Another infantry squad.
sort of the retreat into Germany, they thought, like, maybe if we just kill enough of them,
Only one left!
if we just kill enough of them, we can kind of get like a World War I situation.
Penal troops
Which
are
is
standing
like,
by.
people are just, they don't want to keep fighting.
your ground for the
We'll get some sort of a negotiated peace. We'll have an armistice. We'll all go home. Maybe we'll have to give up some territory and go back to what we were before. And that sort of fantasy, well, not necessarily fantasy, because, you know, they didn't know it wasn't going to work. Yeah, it's basically what the Germans, the Japanese, what they both thought was kind of maybe going to happen. And obviously it didn't turn out like that. So, I mean, if you're still fighting in you know, 1945 in the Wehrmacht, I can really only think of like a couple reasons. And if there's anybody, you know, who knows anything about this,
Strasbourg needs orders.
you know, let me know, because I don't know, I find the psychology of these things interesting. So I can think of like one reason would just be like, you're a true believer, and you think that like either like A, you can still win this thing, or B, you just know that like if you're like a member of the SS or like an SS officer, and like if like the Red Army gets their hands on you, they're gonna kill you for sure. Like you're like a member of the Einsatzgruppen, who were like the kind of paramilitary special units that went around and like burned down Russian villages and did all kinds of things to kind of quote unquote kind of clear the area for the German settlers that were supposed to come later, or you know, steal resources from villages and all that kind of stuff. You were part of concentration camps, SS, you know, or even just you just thought in general they would kill you, which, I mean, the Red Army was pretty mad at this point. Stalin had no point killing his own people. I feel like if you were like a German officer, even if you weren't like a member of the SS, I'd feel like your odds are pretty bad at this point of making it out of this one. Or at least you probably thought they were. So that's one thing. You thought, I'm gonna get killed. Either we can still win this, or I'm gonna get killed, so I might as well fight. Oh man. One interesting tidbit is the Panzer IVs. The later model Panzer IVs had this long-barreled 7.5 centimeter gun. That's actually like a really good weapon, as far as I could tell. I think it's not quite the same gun that went on the Panthers, but it's, you know, it's a really good gun, and supposedly that was the gun that was originally supposed to go on the Tigers, but they just didn't have a turret that fit it, and they had a turret for the 88, and then they just decided to just stick with the 88 because they already started making it like that, and it worked well. So yeah, supposedly the Tiger was originally supposed to have a 7.5 high velocity 7.5 centimeter gun like the Panther did.
Access to penal squads. Use those cowards well.
Though anything about like design of like Wehrmacht equipment is like very kind of confusing, because you had all these kind of different like prima donnas, all sort of involved with different parts of the project. Like, you know, by comparison, I think like American procurement, United States procurement is probably the simplest, because they just go like, okay, this is what we want, and then somebody just makes it, and there's not like all this like drama of like, you know, you have a Henschel make a tank, and Porsche make the turret, and Krupp make the gun, and everybody's like arguing over whose version should do what, and everybody's like going behind people's back to try and get Hitler to prove their version specifically. Okay. Maybe I should drive my Panzer. Let's get in here. So this is the Opera House.
Death before retreat. We now have access to penal squads.
Actually, you know what? I'm gonna bring the Brumbar. You can do it, Brumbar.
Our troops have been lost.
Stand your ground for the Rodina.
Look out for the grenade! I have don't seek the enemy. We need orders. That way, driver, now.
All right. So yeah, I guess if you weren't a true believer and you're still fighting at this point in the war,
Made the ultimate
it's either like, I guess it might be just like you don't really have a choice. Like they're gonna shoot you if you don't fight. But even then, I feel like if that was me, like I'm all for patriotism, and like I get that if you grew up in this time and in this place, you'd probably be like indoctrinated to believe certain things, and that how like about especially if you're like a kid, right? If you're like 16 and they hand you a Panzerfaust and they're like, oh, you gotta defend the 1,000-year Reich, you know, it's like you don't know any better, right? You weren't an adult when this war was started. You grew up in German schools that kind of like fed you certain propaganda, and you know, but like I don't know, I would, if they're like, oh, you gotta go fight or we'll shoot you, I'd probably just hide in a ditch and hopefully the rest of my units get killed, and then I'd go surrender.
Head out. Keep moving.
I'm not dying for Nazi Germany in 1944. Let's see. Okay. And then I guess the last thing, and probably, again, I'm not a historian, I'm just a fan of history, as Dan Carlin likes to call himself. But possibly the largest group is people whose family were trying to flee west to surrender to the Allies in what, you know, would become the Allied. You guys gonna throw that satchel charge or what? Okay, well I guess you don't have to because that mortar was very violent.
We now have access to penal squads. Use those cowards well.
All right, stage 3.
Comrades, hear me! The fascist reign ends here! Across this square is the very symbol of their corruption! You will cross the plaza! You will kill every German you find! You will not stop until the flag of the motherland flies from the rooftop! For the motherland! For Russia! Stalin tank has another kill. You have see if that can be repaired. Moving out! Access routes into Berlin are re-established. Artillery guns are now available for deployment. Comrade, orders from Stalin. Do not destroy the Reichstag. Take it intact. Not fuck with an IS-2. They are not real soldiers. But they throw the charges!
Uh-oh.
Yes, comrade?
Enemy is taking a toll on the staff. Ready for action. Take out that target. Throw those explosives.
So yeah, I mean, if you were like, if you had family, right, and you knowing what you knew about, you know, the Red Army, and you know, some of you, some people might have known like what they had done to to Russian and Polish civilians and Ukraine, well, you know, to Soviet civilians. But a lot of people probably just, all they knew was just the propaganda of like, these people are like subhuman monsters. And now we lost, and now they're coming to get us. So I think a lot of people were very scared, and you know, they wanted to get their families over to the American side, or the the Western Allies side. So not just, obviously not just the Americans, but the the British and the Free French and the Polish and everybody else
Hero troops are standing by.
to surrender to them instead.
One step back, comrades.
And again, it's interesting, you know, obviously this is a little game where you click around people, but to imagine, like, you know, what that was like for these people. And this isn't to make anybody sympathize with,
Those cowards well.
what happened to, let's drop a bomb here.
Airstrike has been authorized.
What happened to, the, you know, citizens of Germany,
Been killed.
but
Treat under penalty of death.
just kind of the general, just that you gotta make complicated decisions in wartime, and there might not be any kind of like right answers, you know.
The enemy has killed another infantry squad. They're shooting at us. Penal squads are now available to die for the motherland.
Okay, why is my T-34 having such problems blowing up this loser ass little Brumbar? It's not like,
Infantry have made the
I mean, it's just a Panzer IV. Okay, oh my god, my mortar teams are like blocking in my...
Strafbach needs orders.
Stand your ground for the Rodina.
So, there was a,
Access to penal squads.
there's a history YouTuber I really like called Potential History. Sorry, I got like a cracker stuck in my throat. Oh my god. Like, this is just like the panther that wouldn't die. Is it gonna kill my eye? Okay, phew, I thought it was gonna kill my... Thought I was gonna kill my, IS-2. And he was recently on this podcast called Stories of World War II or World War II Stories or something like that. And I was watching more of the episodes, and one of the episodes was a guy who was who recently had wrote a book on the invasion of Poland. And maybe this is a little bit unfair of me, but he kind of had a Polish last name, so I'm assuming that part of it is that he felt like Poland had gotten a raw deal, and the sort of myths about, you know, how that all shook out, and he wanted to kind of set the record straight. And I think, and he kind of talked about that to a certain extent
Penal troops are standing by.
as well.
Not one step back, comrades.
Oh, my sniper's still alive. Yes.
Heads up, we're taking fire. Heavy cavalry. Seek and destroy. Shooting anything that moves.
So one of the abilities we get right now is the incendiary barrage, and it's really fun.
Squads are now available to incendiary artillery back. More of our troops have been lost. Strafbach needs orders. MG
But anyway, he was talking about the war and kind of some of the misconceptions and all of that. And one of the things that the host asked him is if there's one, you know, misconception about the Battle of Poland and the invasion of Poland in 1939, that sort of, at least in the West, sort of kicked off World War II proper. You know, what misconception do you think that is? What misconception, you know, do you think you want to clear up? And again, I'm sort of paraphrasing here. And you know, this might be, I don't want this to be like offend anybody in any of the former Soviet territories, but he's like, you know, World War II and Poland wasn't so much invaded by the Third Reich, by Germany, but it was basically started by the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany together, in that there's this thing called the Molotov Ribbentrop pact, which was actually a secret until I think like 1989. Like, it was not officially admitted to until after the fall of the Soviet Union. It's my understanding. And in it, basically what happened is that prior to invading Poland, the German government didn't want to fight another two-front war like they had in World War I. So they went to the Soviet Union and they go, you know, what half of Europe do you want? What half of Europe can we have? And they, along with, you know, the Soviet government, basically drew a line down all these countries. They're like, okay, you can have this, you can have that. We want this, we want that. And basically, you know, divided Europe between them. And that you can think of it like a conspiracy, and you can almost think of it like, and this, the guy didn't say this, but this is my analogy, that it almost seems like you have a bank robbery, and you know, you get the loot, and then everybody starts fighting over the loot, you know, back at the safe house, and starts killing each other. And now it'd be like Operation Barbarossa. And if you think about it in that sense, there's a lot of evidence to that theory. There's the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact itself, which the Soviet Union knew looked really bad, because obviously you can't, you know, you're painting yourselves as like, oh, you know, we were you know, just attacked. But really they were sort of just betrayed, because they had this plan to split everything up together with Germany, and then Germany, you know, betrayed them. And even Vladimir Putin had said, like, oh, it wasn't very good. Like, you know, I think he's kind of said different things about it at various times, but he's sort of struggled to put a good spin on it, because it obviously looks very bad. And also, the other thing to consider is that the only reason, or one of the only reasons, why Germany was so successful in its early armored campaigns is because they'd had lots of training, and training which was supposed to be illegal under the Versailles Treaty. And that training was provided to them by the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union had a secret tank school that opened up in the Ukraine, where German officers could go and drive around on tanks and practice tactics, and do little maneuvers, and test out vehicles, and, you know, store equipment there. That was all totally illegal under the Versailles Treaty, and the Western Allies didn't know about it, because obviously Soviet Union wasn't going to tell them. And you'd go like, well, why would the Soviet Union do that, right? I mean, obviously, a big tenet of at least the fascism that was happening in World War II was opposition to communism. It's like, well, because, you know, they thought maybe they'd get something out of that. That if Germany swept through Europe like a wrecking ball, you know, the Soviet Union could pick up some of the pieces. And if you look at it, that's basically what happened. Now, the problem with all that, though, is like all this is very high level, you know, maneuverings by higher ups and the various, you know, ministries and things. But the, you know, the people who really suffered are obviously the Russian and, you know, Eastern European peoples who had no idea, right? If you're an Irish, have no idea this pact went on, and all you know is you just get attacked out of the blue. So I thought that was interesting, and it's something to think about whenever you read media about World War II and the sort of the cookie cutter sort of explanation that you get about, you know, why it started. Like things can be a little bit more complicated than that. Things can be a little bit more nuanced. Nations and people can have various reasons for doing things. Now, I wouldn't say that I 100% or that I 100% agree with that view. One could see it, and I think this would be probably how it's taught. I don't know because I don't. Okay, this like stupid ass tank here. There we go. You know, I didn't grow up in a Russian school, so I don't know for sure how it's taught, but how I would assume it would be taught in a Russian school or in a, you know, a publication that is leaning favorably towards the Soviet Union, it would be that well, you know, Germany was gonna do what it was gonna do. Uh-oh. Oh, my beautiful. Come on. It would be like, okay, well, Germany was gonna do what it was gonna do anyway, and the Soviet Union needed time to prepare for it, and so, you know, they had to sign this pact because otherwise, you know, they would have been drawn into a war that they were even less ready for than they were, you know, in reality. Oh my god. Stupid pack 88s, even in death, they vex me. Blow this thing up. And you know, maybe that's true, right? I don't know. Again, I'm not a historian, but I did think that, you know, from a perspective of somebody who I feel like was trying to tell the war from a sort of a little bit of a Polish perspective, was that basically like Poland got screwed. Poland got screwed by the Western Allies. It got screwed by Russia, who basically, or the Soviet Union, who agreed to essentially split it up with Germany, and they got screwed by Can I just crush this thing? Okay, we go. And they got screwed by Germany, who invaded them. And the other thing that he was talking about, and I'll have to put the link to the podcast in here, was that, you know, if the Molotov Ribbentrop pact hadn't happened, maybe World War II doesn't happen, or maybe it doesn't happen, you know, when it did, because who knows if the war would have started when it started, if they thought like, oh, maybe we're gonna have to fight a two-front war again, or if they thought we're gonna have to take over all of Poland instead of just half of it. Because as I think I mentioned in an earlier video, the Poles never surrendered. Poland never surrendered, which is why they had all these free Polish regiments fighting all throughout the war in all these various places. So if they'd had to take the entire country, and they'd had, like, you know, there's maybe guerrilla campaigns and partisans and all these things, that maybe things would have turned out differently. So yeah, something to think about. I wish among the many languages that I wish I spoke Russian, because I'd be fascinated to see what a kind of like a contemporary Russian historians, how they view the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Like, is it viewed as negative, or is it viewed as a kind of unfortunate thing, or is it viewed as positive, right? Like, that, hey, you know, we had to, you know, keep Hitler distracted for a little bit while we, you know, figured out our big plan. Okay, stop. Leave my poor T-34 alone. Okay. Scoot back. Da-da-da.
Strafback needs orders. Not one step back, comrades.
See, I don't know. History is complicated, and that every
Squads are now available to die for the motherland.
you know, like, even if there's a consensus on sort of what happened, you know, in, like, let's say the West, every nation has their own views sometimes of what happened, right? And I think one of the things is, so like in the...
Look, there's another howitzer.
Oh crap, I forgot to blow up this one.
Have made the ultimate sacrifice.
Oopsie poopsies.
We are ready to build it or blow it.
We'll repair that.
Now have access to penal squads. Use those cowards well.
And
Stand
I
your
think
ground,
the resources that somebody like me has about the Eastern Front are very limited, because I don't speak Russian, I don't speak German, and as people have mentioned, the United States histories of the Second World War, like the U.S. Army internal histories of the Eastern Front, were basically written by German officers after the war. They basically were like, okay, well, you know, tell us what happened. And obviously it's like, as you can imagine, that that's not going to lead you to a particularly nuanced view of the situation, because obviously, you know, they're gonna paint things in a very pro-German light.
Not one step back, comrades.
All right, so as soon as we take this square, a bunch of Tiger tanks are gonna come out, and we're gonna have to fight them. So I just want to take out this. I want to take out this thing first. So as soon as I see them, I gotta just hit this shit with a satchel charge. So if all I do is kill that, then... Okay, there we go, okay. There we go, okay, all the satchel charges are dead. Alright, so let's roll. Let's get our conscripts ready to roll here. Our snipers ready.
Penal squads are now available to die for the motherland.
Retreat under penalty of death.
Killed another infantry squad.
Wonder where these guys are gonna go now. Oh no, are they gonna kill these? You know what? I'm not having it.
We now have access to penal squads. Use those cowards well.
Let's go.
Stand your ground for the Rodina.
Okay, let's advance, man. So this building is full of infantry, and I don't think you can actually kill them all. I think it's just one of those things. So you just have to bring enough conscripts that you can capture the point before they all die.
Penal squads are now available to die for the motherland.
Well, it's a little bit anticlimactic for the last mission, considering there's basically no way you can lose it, but I guess that's pretty accurate historically, because there's basically no way the Red Army could have lost at this point, as long as they threw enough bodies at the city. Just think about that, 180,000 people, 100,000 Germans, 80,000. It was in a single battle over, you know, a relatively short period of time.
We must destroy those tanks before we can assault the Reichstag itself.
Just as a comparison, the United States, in I believe in Europe, I don't think this is the combined number. I think this is the just in Europe number, lost 400,000 people. Oh man, the Tiger's got dodge moves. Yeah, we're destroying the Tigers. I mean, imagine if the United States lost 100,000 people in a single battle. Alright.
Troops are standing by.
Not one step back, comrades.
Okay, you know, one annoying thing about penal squads is that when they get upgraded to satchel charges, sometimes they throw the satchel charges instead of the AT grenades, even when you click on a tank. Or at least it seems like they do. Let's go. Okay.
We now have access to penal squads. Use those cowards well.
Tigers are down! Comrades, storm the Reichstag now!
Apparently in real life there was like there was like over 1,000 German soldiers stuffed into this building, and they had to clear them out like room by room. And the famous picture of the flag on the roof was taken later.
Millions died to raise that flag. The irony was that the Reichstag had not been in use since Hitler came to power. All those graves for a photograph. I tried to live with what I had seen, but every night my mind raced. I couldn't sleep, not for a year. I knew what I had to do. To honor those men, those soldiers, the truth had to be told. So I tried to defect.
When I saw how you had betrayed us, I personally signed the orders to send you to the Gulag.
I once read that in war, the first casualty is truth. What is inside that book is nothing but truth, comrade. All the men who fought so hard, all of their heroism, it's in those pages. Our victory only brought a different tyranny. I made my peace long ago with the truth. If that means my death, let them do what they must.
We all reap what we sow, comrade.
Lev Abramovich Isakovich, you have been found guilty of crimes against the state. The punishment is death. Do you have any final words?
You'd better go now, comrade. Comrade Isakovich, when they sent me your book after your arrest, I must admit I never read it. Until the day I learned that I was not to survive Comrade Stalin's next purge. I've devoted my life to the motherland, and now I know I have one last duty to perform. I've earned the bullet. The least I deserve is to choose which bullet. So, I'll take yours. The stories of our brave soldiers need to be told.
So, that's the basic campaign. Thank you for watching. Anybody who has watched these, for listening to me ramble about history and tank specifications and things, and the less exciting missions. I feel like the ending of this doesn't really make sense, because where is he going to go in the middle of winter in Siberia in prison clothes? And also, I'm pretty sure you only found out you were part of one of Stalin's purges when they were putting a bag over your head and dragging you somewhere to be shot. But anyway, I'll probably be playing the Ardennes offensive next. And I'm thinking I might actually stream something a little bit slower paced, like Panzer Corps or something. That way, if people get on and want to chat, we can do that. People can tell me that I'm wrong about things, which, to be fair, I probably am. Anyway, thank you for watching, everybody, and have a nice day.